I thought my apartment was safe until I came home one weekend and realized strangers had been staying there while I was away. My landlord was hiding a secret, and it was darker than I ever imagined. I thought I had finally found my little piece of New York. A cozy one-bedroom on the Upper East Side, hardwood floors, sunlight spilling in through tall windows. It felt like home the second I walked in. I even told myself I'd stay here for years. Rent was steep, sure, but worth it for peace, quiet, and the idea of having a space that was completely mine. For the first few weeks, I loved it. I decorated slowly, adding small touches, plants, framed prints, a little rug by the bed. I even invited a few friends over for wine nights and movie marathons. Everything felt normal, safe, like the city couldn't touch me in my little sanctuary. My landlord, Mr. Carmichael, seemed nice enough. Older, quiet, always polite, never intrusive, never hovering. I liked that about him. He checked in occasionally, always with a smile, saying things like, "If you need anything, just call." I never thought to question it. Then, the first weird thing happened. I left for a weekend trip to visit my sister. It was only 2 days, nothing long. When I came back, the door was slightly ajar, just a crack. My heart stopped. I grabbed the doorknob, turned it slowly, and pushed the door open. The apartment looked normal, at first. Then I noticed it, the subtle differences. The cushions on the sofa were rearranged, my throw blanket folded differently. A mug I was certain I had left in the sink was now on the counter, half full of coffee that wasn't mine. I froze, eyes scanning the room. Everything was too clean, too deliberate, too lived in. I called my sister first. "Am I being paranoid?" I whispered. She laughed. "Maybe someone broke in? You need to check locks and security cameras if you have any." I checked everything. Locks fine. Windows closed. Nothing seemed stolen, but the feeling lingered, like a shadow in the room. Someone had been here. Someone had been inside my apartment. A week passed, and then it happened again. Another weekend away, and I came back to find the apartment subtly rearranged once more. Only this time, I saw the evidence. Brochures from a short-term rental service tucked under the TV stand, keys on the counter I hadn't touched, and my favorite chair turned at an odd angle. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe it was a mistake. A neighbor? A friend of the landlord? I didn't know. But one thing became terrifyingly clear. Someone had been using my apartment while I was gone. When I confronted Mr. Carmichael, he smiled. Too easily. Too casually. "Oh, must be your imagination," he said. "I've never entered your apartment while you were away." But I knew. I knew my apartment was no longer mine. If you came home to someone in your apartment and they denied it, what would you do first? Investigate or confront them? After the second incident, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Every time I stepped into my apartment, it felt different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. I started checking everything obsessively, shelves, drawers, even under the couch cushions, but nothing tangible jumped out. Until that Thursday evening, I'd stayed late at work, exhausted, dragging myself up the stairs to my apartment. When I unlocked the door, I noticed something immediately. Smoke. Faint, lingering, sweet-smelling smoke. Candle smoke, I realized. Someone had been here. My stomach turned. I flicked on the lights and froze. The apartment looked normal at first glance, but the scent clung to every corner. My coffee mug, the one I had set aside for the morning, was on the kitchen table. A small chocolate wrapper next to it, the type I never bought. My chair was tilted slightly. My journal, open on the coffee table, had a pen mark in the margin I hadn't written. My heart raced. Someone had been in my apartment while I was at work, and they had touched my things. I wanted to call the police, but then a thought hit me. What if it was Mr. Carmichael, my landlord? He had the master key. He had access. He smiled too easily the last time I confronted him. Too smooth, too confident. I decided to do something reckless. I left a small, distinctive note on my kitchen counter, something only I would recognize. A little scribble with a date, my name, and a silly doodle, just to see if it moved. The next morning, I returned from work. The note was gone, moved, or erased. My blood ran cold. I started snooping. I logged into Airbnb and similar rental apps. I typed in my address, almost expecting nothing. Then I froze. There it was, my apartment, photos that were mine, furniture mine, even my little cactus by the window. The listing claimed it was available for tourists. Nights I was gone, someone else could be sleeping in my apartment. My apartment. I felt sick. My safe space, my little sanctuary, my home. Someone had been using it as a hotel, renting it without my knowledge. My mind raced with every question. How long had this been going on? How many people had stayed here? Why did he think he could get away with this? I wanted to confront him, but fear rooted me to the spot. My landlord, the man I trusted, had been exploiting me, and I had no idea what he was capable of. I spent the night pacing, imagining strangers in my bed, using my dishes, sitting in my chair. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I felt violated in the deepest, most personal way possible. My apartment was supposed to be mine. The next day, I resolved I would find proof. I needed evidence. Photos, screenshots, anything. I wasn't going to let him get away with this, but little did I know, confronting him would uncover secrets far darker than a stolen apartment. If you discovered your landlord was secretly renting your apartment, would you gather evidence first or confront him immediately? I couldn't stop thinking about that Airbnb listing. Every image, every caption screamed betrayal. Someone had been in my apartment without permission while I was gone, and my landlord had been hiding it the entire time. My stomach churned every time I imagined strangers using my home as a hotel. I spent the next day meticulously documenting everything. I took screenshots of the listing, copied dates, and even found reviews from tourists, people who had stayed in my apartment. One wrote, "Love the space, perfect for a weekend getaway, host was friendly." Friendly, my landlord, smiling while renting out my sanctuary. I checked the dates against my own schedule. Weekends I had been away, the apartment was booked. Times I had worked late, booked again. It was systematic, calculated. My blood ran cold. I decided I couldn't wait. I needed to confront him, but I also needed to protect myself. I installed a small security camera in the living room, hidden among my plants. Every time I left the apartment after that, it would record. I felt ridiculous and paranoid, but I knew I had to see it for myself. That Friday, I went to work early, heart pounding, and returned later that evening to review the footage. My jaw dropped. The footage showed him, Mr. Carmichael, master key in hand, letting tourists into my apartment while I was away. He walked them through, smiling, explaining amenities. He wasn't sneaky. He wasn't hiding. He was proud, confident, untouchable. And he had been doing this for months. I felt violated, enraged, and terrified all at once. He had been using my home for his profit, and there was nothing I could do, or so I thought. I printed everything, saved every screenshot, every frame from the camera. I started making a folder, organized and ready in case I needed it as evidence. But something inside me whispered, this wasn't just about money. Something darker was brewing. A week later, I went to confront him in person. I wanted to be calm, rational. I wanted him to admit it. But when I arrived at his office, the receptionist said he was unavailable. I left a note asking for an urgent meeting. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. He didn't introduce himself. The voice was calm but chilling. I see you've discovered my little secret. Careful, some truths aren't meant to be found. My hands shook. My apartment, my home, had become a trap. And now it felt like I was being watched. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just an Airbnb scam. This was personal. And confronting him might put me in danger. I locked my door 3 times that night, triple-checked my windows, and sat in the dark, wondering if the apartment I loved would ever feel safe again. What would you do if your landlord threatened you after discovering he was breaking the law in your own home? The next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. My apartment, my sanctuary, had been violated too many times. I gathered my evidence, screenshots, printed reviews, even clips from my hidden camera. I was shaking, not just from fear, but from adrenaline. I walked into Mr. Carmichael's office, my hands gripping the folder tightly. I asked for him directly. The receptionist hesitated, then finally said, he's expecting you. When he came out, his smile was too calm, too practiced. Ah, good to see you, he said. What brings you here today? I didn't answer immediately. I laid the folder on his desk, every page facing him. I know what you've been doing, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Renting my apartment while I'm away. Tourists, Airbnb, the reviews, everything. His expression didn't change, just a slight raise of the eyebrow. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, casual, almost teasing. I felt my patience snapping. Don't lie to me. I have proof. Every weekend you've been in my apartment, letting strangers in, smiling while doing it. Do you know what that feels like? To come home and find strangers in your space? To find your things moved, touched, used? You've been violating my home for months. He leaned back, crossing his arms. You really think this is personal? It's business, sweetheart. You're just lucky you didn't notice sooner. I stared at him, incredulous. Lucky? I felt anything but lucky. I felt enraged. Business? You profit off my trust, my home, my life. You didn't just break the law, you betrayed me in my own apartment. He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. Careful. You don't know what you're messing with. The words made my blood run cold. I had thought this was about fraud, about stolen money, but the tone, the confidence, the warning in his voice, it felt personal. He wasn't afraid of consequences. He was afraid of nothing. I swallowed my fear and met his eyes. I'm reporting this. The city, the police. Everyone will know. You can't get away with this. He stood, looming slightly, and I noticed a dark glint in his eyes. Oh, I think I already have a head start. But you've been curious, nosy, and curiosity in the wrong apartment can be dangerous. A chill ran down my spine. My apartment wasn't just a place, it was a trap, and he was the architect. I left his office with my folder clutched to my chest. Every step I took felt heavy, weighted with fear and determination. He had underestimated me, but I was done feeling powerless. One thing was clear, this wasn't over. Confronting him had only scratched the surface, and now I had to decide, fight back, or risk losing everything I called home. If your landlord threatened you after discovering illegal activity, would you go to the authorities immediately or plan your next move first? I couldn't stop thinking about his words. Curiosity in the wrong apartment can be dangerous. He had made it personal. My sanctuary, my home, wasn't safe. Not anymore. But fear wouldn't win this time. I needed a plan. I spent that night pacing my apartment, reviewing every bit of evidence, screenshots of the Airbnb listing, tourist reviews, footage from my hidden camera, even the dates I'd cross-checked with my own schedule. Everything pointed to one undeniable truth. He was systematically using my apartment while I was away. I needed proof that would hold up legally. I researched city housing laws, tenant rights, and short-term rental regulations. I found out that illegally renting out someone else's apartment could land him in serious trouble. Fines, lawsuits, and potentially criminal charges. But I couldn't act recklessly. He was unpredictable, dangerous. The next day, I went to a small electronics store and bought extra security cameras. I installed them in discreet locations. Living room, bedroom, near the door, angled so I could capture every movement without being obvious. If he tried anything again, I would have undeniable proof. I also created a folder on my laptop labeled Landlord Evidence. Every screenshot, email, and video clip went there, backed up on the cloud. I wanted it secure, untouchable. If he tried to delete anything, it wouldn't matter. Then came the part that made my stomach twist. I needed witnesses. I reached out to a few previous tenants in the building, anonymously asking if they had ever noticed anything unusual or had experiences with Airbnb-like rentals. Surprisingly, some had. Some had noticed strangers entering apartments while residents were away. Some had heard rumors about Mr. Carmichael profiting from short-term rentals. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. He had been hiding this for years, and the city had no idea. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about my apartment anymore. It was about justice, about stopping him before someone else got hurt, before someone else lost their safe space. But I knew confronting him directly again would be risky. I needed a calculated approach. I couldn't let anger guide me. I had to act like a professional, a detective, a strategist. Every step I took had to be deliberate, and as I stared out the window at the city lights, I made a promise to myself. I would reclaim my apartment, I would expose him, and I would do it in a way that left him no room to retaliate. This was more than a fight over a home. It was a battle for control, for safety, for truth. I felt the first spark of courage in days, maybe weeks. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt powerful, and I knew exactly where to start. If you discovered someone was exploiting your home, would you fight back strategically or go straight to the authorities? I spent days preparing. Every detail of my apartment, every routine, every angle of the security cameras, everything had to be perfect. I wasn't just documenting anymore, I was setting a trap. I knew he would strike again, and I needed him caught red-handed. I carefully planned a weekend getaway, just like before, but this time, it was part of the setup. I left the apartment exactly as I usually did. Locks engaged, keys in my bag, just like a typical weekend away. But hidden cameras recorded every corner, and my phone was linked to live feed so I could watch from anywhere. I left Friday night, heart pounding. Anxiety gnawed at me the whole subway ride. My mind ran through every possibility. What if he noticed the cameras? What if he suspected something? What if he had someone else watching me? I arrived at a friend's apartment uptown and watched the feeds. At first, nothing happened. I tried to calm myself, reminding myself that patience was part of the plan. Then around midnight, I saw movement. Shadows flickered near the door, my stomach dropped. A key turned in the lock. The door opened slowly, just like before. There he was, Mr. Carmichael. Calm, confident, completely unaware of the cameras recording every second. He stepped inside, glanced around as if inspecting the apartment, and then he unlocked another lock I didn't know existed behind a cabinet. He revealed a small safe, took something out and left it on the counter. A stack of cash, maybe the earnings from the rentals. I watched, frozen but exhilarated. The proof was undeniable. Every move he made, every illegal act, captured in high-definition video. Then he heard a sound. He froze. His eyes darted toward the hallway. I held my breath, heart hammering. Did he suspect? I didn't move. I stayed silent on the live feed, letting him continue. He picked up brochures, took another stack of cash, and left, locking the door behind him. I exhaled slowly, relief mixed with adrenaline. I knew I had him. I also knew confronting him directly would be dangerous. He wasn't just a greedy landlord. He was calculating, cunning, and willing to threaten me to protect his secret. I downloaded all the footage, organized it, and made multiple backups. Every date, every entry, every detail of his illegal activity was meticulously documented. This wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. Now I had a choice. I could go straight to the authorities, or I could plan my next move carefully, ensuring that no one, not even him, could twist the situation against me. For the first time, I felt in control. He had underestimated me. He had thought I was naive, trusting, powerless. But the trap was set, the evidence secured, and soon, justice would be inevitable. As I finally went to sleep that night, I felt a sense of satisfaction, sharp and sweet. The hunter had become the hunted. Have you ever set a plan to catch someone in the act? How would you feel watching them make the first mistake? I thought capturing him on camera would be enough. Proof in hand, I imagined going to the authorities and finally feeling safe in my own apartment. But I underestimated him. Mr. Carmichael wasn't just greedy, he was dangerous. It started with subtle messages. Notes slipped under my door, typed on scraps of paper, no signature. Curiosity can be costly. Be careful who you trust. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but then came the calls. Unknown numbers, silence on the other end, just breathing. A low, deliberate sound that made my blood run cold. The first time he came to my apartment unannounced after that, I was home. I had decided to monitor him without leaving any evidence he could detect. He rang the bell at midnight, claiming he had to inspect something urgent. I refused. He knocked harder, shouted, tried to intimidate. But I didn't open the door. My security cameras recorded everything. His face, twisted with frustration, his eyes glinting like he was sizing me up. It became a game of cat and mouse. I'd leave for work and I could feel him watching. I'd come home and subtle changes marked his intrusion. A chair slightly moved. A pen I always kept on my desk gone. A brochure tucked between my books. He wanted to scare me, to reclaim control. I started sleeping in shifts, never leaving my apartment empty for too long. I called friends to check in, made sure someone always knew my location. My sanctuary felt like a prison, but I refused to give in to fear. Then came the chilling moment. I received an email with the subject line, "You shouldn't have seen me." Attached was a photo, me entering my apartment after work, unaware, captured from the building's stairwell. My heart froze. He could see me, he could follow me, he knew my routines. Panic surged, but I forced myself to breathe. I realized I needed more than just evidence. I needed protection, allies, a plan that would corner him without putting me in immediate danger. I contacted a local tenant rights lawyer and discreetly explained everything. The lawyer's reaction was immediate, concerned, but calm. "We can take this to the authorities. He's been breaking multiple laws, but you must be careful. This man is calculated. Do not confront him alone again." I felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that I had legal support. Dread that he now knew I was mobilizing against him. That night, I checked my cameras one last time before bed. In the hallway, I saw movement. A shadow. Not of a tourist, not of a delivery person. His silhouette lingered just beyond the lens, watching, waiting. I realized then, fully and completely, that this wasn't just about stolen weekends or Airbnb profits. This was about control, power, and fear, and he wouldn't give it up easily. But I also realized something else. I wasn't alone anymore. I had evidence, a plan, and people who could help me. And for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt ready. What would you do if someone who violated your home started stalking you? I knew he wouldn't stop until one of us broke. Every note, every call, every shadow outside my door was his way of reminding me that this was his building, his rules. But I wasn't the scared tenant he thought I was anymore. I was done playing defense. My lawyer helped me contact a city inspector and a detective who specialized in housing fraud. We arranged an inspection. Official, documented, and unannounced. The plan was simple. I'd lure him into entering my apartment again while the authorities were waiting nearby. One last recording. One last act of arrogance. That's all I needed. I set everything in motion that Friday. I pretended to leave for the weekend again, suitcase in hand, lights off, blinds half closed, the perfect illusion of absence. The cameras were live, my phone synced, and the officers were stationed discreetly near the lobby. Hours passed. I tried to keep calm, but my nerves were on fire. Every creak, every distant sound made me flinch. Then, just after midnight, I saw him on the live feed. Mr. Carmichael. Same confident stride, same smirk. He used his master key and stepped inside like he owned the place. I watched him walk through, inspecting, muttering under his breath. Then he made a call. "Yeah, the place is empty. We'll do the check-in tomorrow. Keep it quiet this time," he said. That was it. The final proof. I texted the detective. He's inside. Within minutes, footsteps echoed down the hall on the camera feed. The door burst open. Flashlights, shouts. "Mr. Carmichael, this is the NYPD. Step away from the door." He froze, the color draining from his face. For the first time, the mask cracked. He tried to talk his way out of it, his words tumbling fast. "This is a misunderstanding. I was checking a leak. She's lying." But the evidence was all there. The cameras, the documents, the tourist logs, the money trail, everything. I stepped out from the shadows in the hallway, heart pounding but voice steady. "You used my home. You threatened me. You thought I wouldn't fight back." He turned, his expression dark, venomous. "You'll regret this," he hissed as they cuffed him. I held my ground. "No, you will." As they led him away, I felt every ounce of fear drain from my body. Weeks of sleepless nights of watching, hiding, waiting. It was finally over. The detective turned to me. "You did good. Brave too. Most people would have just moved out." I nodded, still trembling, staring at the man who once held all the power. Not anymore. For the first time in months, I walked back into my apartment, locked the door, and let myself breathe. It felt different, lighter, freer. Like reclaiming a part of myself I didn't realize I'd lost. But deep down, a question lingered. If he'd been bold enough to rent out my apartment, how many others had he done this to? And how many secrets was this building still hiding? If you caught someone breaking the law inside your home, would you confront them or wait for the police to handle it? Part 9, the fallout. The news spread quickly. Within days, Mr. Carmichael was suspended from his properties, investigated for multiple illegal short-term rentals, and facing serious legal consequences. I kept checking online, half in disbelief, half in triumph. The landlord who had haunted my apartment, taunted me with threats, and tried to intimidate me was finally being held accountable. But it wasn't just relief that I felt. It was the weight of what had happened, all at once. I had trusted him. I had laughed at his polite greetings, believed in his friendly demeanor. He had violated my home, my privacy, and even my sense of security. And for months, I had lived with fear, paranoia, and anger that never fully faded. The city inspector sent me an official notice. My apartment was safe, legally protected, and I had every right to occupy it without fear. I could finally breathe, lock my doors without anxiety, and reclaim my space fully. But something had shifted inside me. The apartment that once felt cozy and warm now carried the memory of betrayal, a shadow I couldn't completely erase. Friends rallied around me. They brought dinners, offered to stay over, and shared stories of their own experiences with tricky landlords. Their support reminded me I wasn't alone, that my fears were valid, and that what I had gone through wasn't just a personal battle, it was systemic, something many tenants faced silently. I started taking small steps to reclaim my home emotionally. I reorganized, redecorated, and even added new security measures, not because I feared him returning, but to restore the feeling that my apartment belonged to me. I planted new flowers, hung new artwork, and made small changes to remind myself this was my sanctuary, my space, my life. But even in victory, a part of me stayed vigilant. I knew people like him existed, those who would exploit, manipulate, and threaten for profit or control. And I promised myself I wouldn't let fear make me timid again. Months later, I still glance at the front door every time I leave, half expecting someone to step out. It's a reminder that trust must be earned and that courage isn't about never feeling fear. It's about acting despite it. I started writing again, journaling the entire experience, not just as therapy, but as a record. A record that could help others, warn them, guide them. If sharing my story could prevent even one person from being violated in their own home, it would be worth it. I had survived. I had fought back. And I had learned a harsh but invaluable lesson. Safety isn't guaranteed, but vigilance, courage, and preparation can reclaim it. For the first time in months, I smiled as I turned the key in my apartment door. It was finally mine again. If someone violated your home, how would you rebuild trust in your own space? Would you take extra precautions or rely on the law? It's been months since Mr. Carmichael was taken into custody. Months since I first discovered the truth about my apartment. And yet, the experience lingers. Not as fear, but as a lesson I carry with me every day. I never imagined that the place I called home could be turned into a trap, that someone I trusted could exploit me so completely. At first, the betrayal consumed me. Anger, fear, helplessness. I doubted myself, questioned my judgment, and even wondered if I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I trusted my instincts, and that trust saved me. Reclaiming my apartment wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about reclaiming my own power. Every lock I reinforced, every camera I installed, every conversation with my lawyer was a step toward taking back control. I learned that vigilance and preparation are forms of self-respect, that protecting your space and your peace isn't paranoia, it's intelligence. I also learned the importance of documentation. Screenshots, logs, evidence, they aren't just tools for justice, they are shields against disbelief, manipulation, and intimidation. And allies matter. Friends, lawyers, authorities, they're not just support, they're part of the net that keeps predators in check. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: fear doesn't have to define you. I lived in fear for weeks, every creak in the floor, every knock on the door, a reminder of what could happen. Yet, instead of letting it control me, I used it to fuel action. Fear became my compass, guiding me toward vigilance and courage. Now, when I walk through my apartment, I don't see shadows of threats or betrayal. I see resilience. I see a woman who refused to be intimidated, who faced danger with preparation, intelligence, and courage. I see someone who turned a violation into empowerment. I also carry empathy for others. So many tenants face similar situations silently, afraid, unsure who to trust. I've shared my story with friends, online communities, and tenant advocacy groups. Every message I receive, "Thank you for sharing, I thought I was alone," reminds me that exposure is not just justice for myself. It's a beacon for others. And so I live differently now, not in fear, but in awareness, not trapped by betrayal, but strengthened by it. My apartment is finally mine again, but more importantly, my confidence, my sense of security, and my voice are mine too. I no longer wonder if I'll ever feel safe. I know I will, because safety is not just about locks or laws. It's about knowing your worth, trusting your instincts, and taking control when the world tries to take it from you. And for that, I am unstoppable. If you survived a betrayal or violation, how would you reclaim your power? Would you rely on action, awareness, or both?